watching the English newscast on Future Television. I'm Linda Tamima. These are today's top stories. Visiting Egyptian Foreign Minister Sameh Khouri visits key politicians and expresses interest in strengthening ties with Lebanon. The country is mourning the death of Ghazi Ad, the founder of the supporter of the Lebanese in detention and exile group. And hundreds of residents in Hammam al-Alil, southeast of Mosul, receive humanitarian aid after its recapture from the Islamic State. Visiting Egyptian Foreign Minister Sameh Khouri has expressed interest in strengthening ties with Lebanon, saying it plays an important role in maintaining the joint interests of Arab countries. After holding talks with President Michel Aoun at Babda Palace, Shukri told reporters that Egypt is seeking to open communication with Lebanon's institutions for a deep dialogue and to build a strong relationship to achieve their common goals. The Egyptian foreign minister is in Lebanon to convey his country's support for the recent political breakthrough in Lebanon. He also met with Parliament Speaker Nabih Berri, his Lebanese counterpart Gibran Bassil, and Prime Minister-designate Saad Hariri. In a joint press conference with Bassil, Shukri reiterated hopes that Cairo and Beirut will unify their efforts to strengthen bilateral ties. Lebanon is mourning the death of Ghazi Ad, founder of the support of the Lebanese in detention exile group. Ad was hospitalized in late October and had been in a coma up until his death earlier this morning. President Michel Aoun said Ad will remain present for defending the rights of every human being, and he struggled for those who are missing. Prime Minister-designate Saad Hariri contacted Ad's family to offer his condolences, while caretaker Foreign Minister Gibran Bassil and caretaker Economy Minister Ala Hakim paid homage to Ad via Twitter. Just a reminder that thousands of people went missing during the 1975-1990 civil war, many of whom are believed to be imprisoned in Syria, while others are likely buried in mass graves throughout Lebanon. Parliament Speaker Nabih Berri has dismissed claims that he was planning to transmit the Amal movement leadership to his son. Recent local media reports said the speaker was seeking to hand over the movement's leadership to his son Abdullah, who is now in his early 40s. But Berri said the members of the Amal movement are the ones who preserve the party's legacy and path, and not the family or tribe. A large fire has swept through a Syrian refugee camp in East Lebanon. The national news agency says the flames damaged around 12 tents in Al-Faida in the eastern city of Zahle. A child was recorded to be suffering from shortness of breath. It remains unclear what ignited the blaze. Syrian government and Russian warplanes have pounded rebel-held parts of northern Syria, including battered second city Aleppo, where food aid rations were all but exhausted after months of government siege. The renewed bombardment has killed at least 20 people, including 9 children, in Aleppo alone in the last 24 hours, and sparked anger from the United States and the United Nations. Damascus and its ally Russia launched a wide-ranging assault on rebels, shattering a month of relative calm in the rebel-held east of devastated Aleppo. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights also reported ongoing strikes in Idlib province in northwestern Syria, which is mostly controlled by a coalition of rebel groups. Men, women and children who escaped militant control in Iraq's Mosul shared their relief on reaching safety. Trucks and buses packed with new arrivals from eastern Mosul are now being directed to an extension site where thousands more families can be housed at the government-run Khazir M1 camp a few minutes away, where UNHCR is providing emergency relief items, including mattresses and blankets.
More families are reunited after fleeing Mosul. A few days ago, Hamda risked her life to make a secret phone call to her sons in Erbil. See you in Khazar camp tomorrow, she told them. The next day, she fled the fighting with her daughters.
شعوري ماكو مثلهم بس شفت ولادي الله جمعني قلت بس ساعتين وخليني اموت.
The moment of reunion was filled with joy and tears.
والله يعني فرحنا يعني وهاي سنتين ونص تقريبا ما شايفينها. تأذينا حيل يعني تأذينا. دوامنا يعني يمينا بس كان خابرهم يعني بالغباء هم يخابرون لا هم يخابرونا.
But the family's joy was also mixed with some sad memories.
هاي بنتي ذبحوا رجلها. هاي هذا ذبحوه خذوه يبيع الحاجة بربع. هاي يا بنتي خذوه 5 أيام وذبحوه. وجت عندي لا بالثلاجة يبيع حاجة فاطس من جوا.
لي أمل أقول إن شاء الله طيب. وأنا أبوك الله كريم. حسب الله ونعم الوكيل عليهم.
The flight to freedom for families can be treacherous. This little boy was badly injured by a mortar. Hamda and her daughters are among 54,000 men, women and children who have been displaced since the start of the offensive. And many more are expected.
Coming up next, people in New York City hold a protest against the Dakota Access Pipeline. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Russian President Vladimir Putin has signed an executive order withdrawing Russia's signature from the International Criminal Court's founding treaty, whose pronouncements Moscow has derided as one-sided. The order, which took immediate effect, said Russia would not ratify the ICC's founding treaty, something it signed in 2000. The Russian Foreign Ministry said in a statement that the court had unfairly accused Russian forces involved in a brief 2008 war with Georgia. A report issued by the ICC's Office of the Prosecutor angered Moscow by referring to Russia's 2014 annexation of Ukraine's Crimea as an armed conflict. Russia is also under international pressure over its campaign of airstrikes in Syria, with some humanitarian rights activists and U.S. officials accusing it of bombing civilian targets. Russia has denied any of those allegations. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry has arrived at the Marrakesh Climate Conference, hoping to decide the finer points of a historic climate agreement after a year of negotiations that resulted in global agreements to stave off the worst effects of climate change. Instead, he finds himself having to reassure delegates from the almost 200 nations that they can count on the United States to abide by the 2015 Paris Agreement, despite U.S. President-elect Donald Trump's promise to withdraw the U.S. from the climate treaty. Trump has called climate change a hoax and said he would rip up the Paris deal, halt any U.S. taxpayer funds for UN global warming programs, and revive the U.S. coal sector. Moving on to Afghanistan, a suicide bomber on foot struck a government vehicle, killing at least 6 people and wounding several others in an attack claimed by the Islamic State. The latest bombing on a vehicle carrying national security officials in Kabul came during the morning rush hour, as fighters intensify nationwide attacks on the Western-backed government. And in the United States, the companies behind the Dakota Access Pipeline have asked a U.S. court to intervene in the fight over its completion, as demonstrators fanned out across North America to protest the controversial project. In New York City, a demonstration was held a day after the U.S. government delayed granting an easement for the pipeline's construction in North Dakota. Natasha Hewitt reports.
Love, that's right, we are going to...
Demonstrators in New York are protesting against the construction of a controversial pipeline they say could pollute water supplies and destroy sacred historical sites. The $3.7 billion project, known as the Dakota Access Pipeline, has drawn steady opposition across the country. Environmental activists and Native Americans, particularly the nearby Standing Rock Sioux tribe, have called on the government to stop it.
We want to stand with the Sioux people in defending sacred land against poisonous pipelines that threaten millions of people in the entire region and threaten ultimately the climate of the entire planet.
The companies behind the project have asked a US court to intervene and stop political involvement. They say the pipeline is almost complete and will be a safer and more efficient way to transport oil from North Dakota to the US Gulf Coast. Delays so far have cost them more than $100 million.
Messaging app Snapchat has filed confidentially with the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission for an initial public offering. As Lily Jamali reports, it's expected to be huge. Let's find out more.
Snapchat is officially going public. Reuters reporting exclusively that the messaging app has confidentially filed for an initial public offering, and it's expected to be big. Correspondent Leanna Baker broke the story. She says investors are eager to take a look at the numbers in the prospectus.
I think revenue growth will be really important. With startups, profitability isn't something that investors focus on. There's also going to be a lot of interest into the diversity of Snapchat's revenue. There's concern that they're too advertising focused.
Snapchat started in 2012 as a free mobile app that allows users to send photos that disappear, but more recently it's rebranded itself as Snap Inc., expanding its offering, even debuting its $130 video camera sunglasses earlier this month.
When I look at Snapchat, I see reasonable profits growth in prospect from advertising and also from the money transfer business that Snapchat is able to provide its users. I see a lot of people wanting to access the up to 24 years old age group, which is otherwise quite hard to access, and therefore I suspect that Snapchat will have no shortage of people wanting to provide capital to participate.
Sources say Snapchat's IPO could happen as soon as March, with a potential valuation that's been pegged as somewhere between $20 and $25 billion, possibly even higher.
In the past year, there was only about 14 to 15 tech IPOs. I think if you combine all of those, you wouldn't even get to this valuation. This is going to be the biggest thing to hit IPO markets in tech in years. We're talking about going back to the Facebook IPO. It's that sort of situation.
As Wall Street banks jockey for position in hopes of taking the lead on the deal, for investors, the talk is whether Snapchat will open the floodgates for other unicorns like Uber and Airbnb to take the plunge next.
So popular. This marks the end of our bulletin for today. Now for a reminder of our top stories. Visiting Egyptian Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry visits key politicians and expresses interest in strengthening ties with Lebanon. Lebanon is mourning the death of Ghazi Rad, founder of the Support of the Lebanese in Detention and Exile Group. And hundreds of residents in Hammam al-Alil, southwest of Mosul, receive humanitarian aid after its recapture from the Islamic State. Those are your headlines in English for today. I'm Linda Tamim, and I'll see you again tomorrow.